The following is a CTV special presentation.
Today, trying to get from point A to point B in Winnipeg without hitting a single traffic light? Impossible. Today, we look at Winnipeg's road system, why Winnipeg lacks when it comes to freeways, and what the city has to substitute them with. Plus, we also talk about the city planner from Toronto on what he thinks of this city and what could be done. Plus, we compare a city that is identical to Winnipeg, why this city flows so much better than Winnipeg on so many levels, and how this city prospers from what Winnipeg lacks.
CTV News.
A 10-minute news update live from Winnipeg with Kelly Dunn and Trevor Pascal.
Good afternoon. Thanks for joining me. Kelly Dunn is off today. You're driving in Winnipeg and all of a sudden you hit a red light. You drive another few kilometers and you find yourself stopping for yet another traffic light. Why is Winnipeg the only major city with above 500,000 civilians with no freeways? Now, this is the topic I'm going to be talking to you about on the special edition of WKGM Pulse News. Now, Winnipeg's population is just hovering around the 700 mark. With that, many people living and working creates a lot of traffic. Take a look at a map of the city of Winnipeg. You can see the major commute lines starting from the north: McPhillips Street, Main Street, Henderson Highway, Lagimodiere Boulevard, Bishop Grandin Boulevard, Pembina Highway, McGillivray Boulevard, Wilkes Avenue, Waverly Street, Kenaston Boulevard, Portage Avenue, and Oak Point Highway. Now, the plan was first talked about by the George, Rich, and Boris Hyjok. They were planning for the future, the plan to create 5 freeways in the city, a beltway through the city, and a short subway line through the city. Now, the 5 freeways would have been the Northern Freeway, which was scratched after opposition from a local school in 1979 to 1980, as well as the Southern Freeway, which was described in the Plan Winnipeg literature as a realignment of Wilkes Avenue. Now, the Western Freeway was also included in there, as well as the Eastern Freeway. The Southeastern Freeway was also in that plan, but the freeway would create a downtown bypass and link up with the Disraeli Freeway, and the suburban beltway, which would be a ring road a few kilometers inside the perimeter highway. Now, back in 1980 to 81, city transportation planners tried unsuccessfully to add the Northern Freeway to the city's 5-year capital budget, which the Northern Freeway was to connect Sherbrooke Street with McGregor Street, creating the Sherbrooke-McGregor overpass. However, Sir McNairman of the Rosbrook House opposed this idea, and City Council ultimately voted against it. Now, the Southern Freeway is currently being constructed as the Sterling Parkway and includes the Kenaston Underpass. Now, joining us to learn more about freeways and how they could help us is a city planner from Toronto. Now, Jeffrey, first of all, I want to say thank you for joining us today. Now, can you tell me something? Can you tell me how freeways can help cities like Winnipeg?
Well, first of all, freeways should already exist in a city, starting with populations around 50,000 people. Now, freeways not only reduce congestion and pollutions, they make cities more efficient in economic terms. They allow safe, fast speeds through a city without the unnecessary need for stopping at a traffic light. Freeways are basically free because they don't stop drivers, and with the constant stop and go you would regularly get with the street, there's constantly more pollution created.
Now, Jeffrey, when the city of Winnipeg was at its boom time, planners were estimating Winnipeg to be the Chicago of the North, with the city basically doubling in population literally every year back in 1920, and then becoming Canada's 3rd biggest city in the 1960s. Why wouldn't city officials take this to consideration and plan ahead? I mean, they saw that Winnipeg was booming in with population. Why not plan ahead and make room for future freeways?
Well, when Winnipeg was the 3rd biggest city, notice that it isn't anymore. I think the main reason is Winnipeg grew too fast, and city planners did not have the time to plan any future freeways. And when they did, it was either too late or officials would oppose the idea.
So that's saying that Winnipeg was slow on the job.
Well, basically, Winnipeg is not the 3rd largest city anymore because it couldn't handle the growth at the time. And now it's, the 8th largest in Canada?
Yeah.
And has a growth rate now of 2.2%.
Now, this is true. Now, Jeff, I also wanted to touch on the perimeter highway. Was this a good idea?
Trevor, the perimeter highway was a thoughtful idea, was the solution to no freeways. In my opinion, the perimeter should have been a few kilometers more inside the city. Even still, the perimeter also should have 110 kilometers an hour speed limit, which they are considering, but for the most part, the perimeter highway should not have a single traffic light system. There should be more interchanges and more barricades. No car and train should ever be able to cross over.
Do you recall the project a generation ago called the Inner Perimeter? The needed beltway would have paralleled the perimeter highway about halfway between it and the core of the city. A foolish bias against cars derailed it, even after whole sections were constructed in different parts of the city.
That's right. Even if it was built, Winnipeg would have more potential. Freeways factor in such an economical feature to the city. It's no wonder Winnipeg is no longer such in high demand.
Now, the province of Manitoba collects $227 million a year in gasoline taxes. This is interesting. $335 million a year in total taxes and fees from provincial drivers. But here's the fun part. Budget's only $160 million a year on construction and maintenance of highways, which is so questionable. And you look at our roadways and streets and it's like, how could anyone let this happen? And is it even worth it to fix the perimeter highway?
Well, to make the perimeter highway a first world roadway, in a 5-year program, the Highways Department would have to spend only about half the remaining funds that should have been dedicated to road building and repair in the first place. In other words, we're already paying the money for better roads, but it leaks into other provincial purposes.
Now, I also wanted to touch on a great example, the Disraeli Freeway, Winnipeg's only freeway for that matter. The freeway is accelerated the growth in East Kildonan by, I believe, 30,000 people back in 1959. Now, the freeway is expected to close for 16 months coming up, which is unbelievable. And again, it's unnecessary for this closure for the Disraeli Freeway.
Actually, this is true. If you're going to shut down a freeway for 16 months, a road that thousands of people depend on each day, it better be upgraded to something more than the same. I know they were talking recently about building the first span and reconstructing the old span into 3 lanes, which in total would end up with a 6-lane freeway, which also would not interrupt commute. The original plan for the 4-lane structure with concrete divider will cost around $150 million. The structure would cost around $250 to $350 million. But this again is an example of Winnipeg not thinking ahead. Why would you build the same freeway which can hold its max right now? Think in the future. Winnipeg is failing to consider the growth of Winnipeg.
Though the city has not finalized a plan on this freeway, Winnipeg Mayor Sam Cates is leaning more towards the 4-lane structure, which I question his mayor abilities at that point. Another quick topic that I wanted to talk to you about is the expansion of the Chief Peguis Bridge. This is so interesting because the city actually planned this for the future, and well, now the future is here, and that sounds interesting on how this would work, Jeffrey. What are your thoughts about this? The Chief Peguis Bridge, actually.
That's right, the city of Winnipeg actually made room for the future expansion of this bridge all the way from, hopefully I'm pronouncing this right, La Guimaudière Boulevard from McPhillips Street. Construction is set to start next year from Henderson Highway to La Guimaudière, but this is nowhere near freeway standards. I do agree that North Kildonan does need a major roadway connecting La Guimaudière with Henderson, but again, they are doing it in the wrong way, and in what? There will be many traffic lights and stops, thus creating another Winnipeg disaster.
So in other words, the expansion is not exactly going to help the overflow of traffic, just worsen the idea.
Well, it will help with the overflow, but I mean city planners really need to think it through and build for the future.
I would like to see where the city will be in 20 years from now.
I can guarantee it will almost be identical, Trevor. They may expand a few roadways, but a chance that any roadway would be upgraded to a freeway is highly unlikely.
Which to any other city planner is a disgrace to Winnipeg.
Essentially, yes. But you also have to look at how there isn't a lot you can do with Winnipeg already. It It's a huge city that could have a lot of potential, but the damage is already done, and that's why they haven't built the perimeter to patch things up.
And I just stop you there, another disaster project, the Perimeter Highway.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Jeffrey, for staying and talking with us today, helping us understand this freeway problem that Winnipeg does have and what Winnipeg will basically never see.
Not a problem. It's been a pleasure.
And that was, of course, one of Toronto's city planners, Jeffrey McKay. Now, we're going to be heading to a break, but when we return, we're going to compare a city which is identical to Winnipeg, see how successful they were. Plus, I'll have a complete look at your Skywatch weather forecast. Stay tuned. More after the break.